Turning now to the southern border, where the governor of Texas refuses to give in to federal law.
Supreme Court says federal agents can remove razor wire that the Texas National Guard placed along the Rio Grande to try and deter illegal border crossings. But in the border city of Eagle Pass, the state is still keeping federal border patrol agents away from one of those crossing points. Omar Villafranca is there with the very latest.
Good morning. We are outside of Shelby Park, right on the Rio Grande. And the park is now covered with this razor wire as far as the eye can see, and also in my line of sight, Texas National Guard armed and on standby. Now, the feds say the state put miles of this razor wire up, which prevents them from doing their job and getting to the water if migrants are in distress. Earlier this week, the Supreme Court ruled that Border Patrol agents could cut and remove the wire. But after that ruling, our cameras saw Texas Guardsmen uncoiling and preparing more wire to lay out. Now, another issue here, park access. Border Patrol says it doesn't have full access to the park where many migrants illegally cross. State troopers and Texas guardsmen have closed it to federal agents. Border Patrol says it needs full access to do their job. The Biden administration has ordered the state to allow Border Patrol full access to this area by Friday. Now, Texas Governor Greg Abbott is firing back. He's saying that if the federal government won't enforce the immigration laws that are currently on the books, then Texas will be forced to secure their own border. Of course, this battle is not over. They're expected to be back in court over this next month. Vlad and Marie.
Omar, thank you very much. I want to bring in Nikole Killion now to talk more about the border deal negotiations on Capitol Hill. Nikole, what's the latest on border security negotiations as it relates to funding for Ukraine? I've heard some reporting that suggests that Mitch McConnell is talking to his caucus about that very notion if Donald Trump is to be the eventual nominee. What are you hearing?
Yeah, well, basically, these talks appear to be treading water. You know, there had been some hope that there could potentially be some type of a breakthrough this week, as lawmakers have now been meeting for the better part of well over a month and a half to try to reach some type of consensus around the border in order to move this national security supplemental, which includes funding for Ukraine, Israel, the Indo-Pacific, and other foreign aid priorities. But Senate Republicans did have a meeting yesterday where a lot of these senators had an opportunity to kind of lay out their grievances with the process. There's a lot of frustration that many Republicans haven't seen the text. They really kind of don't know the contours of a potential deal. But what was notable is that Leader McConnell actually quoted the former president in this meeting, suggesting, you know, that the politics of the situation may not be ideal to try to move this package forward, which is pretty much an about face for the minority leader, in the sense that he has been a pretty vocal advocate of trying to pair the border and these Ukraine funding. He's a staunch advocate, of course, of supporting additional aid to Ukraine, and has really been trying to get the ball moving with this package. But yesterday really was one of the first times we've seen him appearing to cast doubt on a potential deal.
Well, speaking of the former president, and I know we've been talking about the Senate, but the former president, as you know, was putting pressure on the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, not to give in with these negotiations when it came to funding and its connection to border policy. And Mike Johnson has sort of openly said that he talks to the former president on a regular basis. How is the former president's campaign playing into these talks?
Well, I think certainly as the presidential primary process moves forward, and obviously, you know, things are not yet resolved, but a lot of the consensus and speculation appears to be that the former president will likely end up being the nominee for the Republican nomination. And so if that ends up being the case, obviously that does impact kind of the politics of what happens here on Capitol Hill, particularly particularly with respect to the border. We know that Republicans in particular have and continue to make a border kind of a signature issue and priority. And of course, the former president continues to campaign on what he argues was his strength and his hard line, taking a hard line with respect to the border. So that is part of the calculus as far as these talks are concerned, which is why perhaps, Leader McConnell indicated that, the politics may not necessarily be right. And obviously, if some type of compromise were struck, that would be a win to a certain extent for the Biden administration, which has been kind of pushing this package again for several months now. So in effect, if any kind of border deal is killed, then that kind of denies that opportunity to the White House in terms of, having some type of bipartisan victory. The caveat to that, though, is that even if the Senate comes up with a deal, there was never and still is no guarantee that the House would advance that package. And to that extent, Speaker Johnson has remained relatively non-committal to whatever the Senate may craft if they end up coming up with some kind of border deal. So there are a lot of, nuances to the politics of this, both on the presidential level, but also kind of on a micro level here on the Hill.
Yeah, I mean, Nikole, so what you're essentially saying is for months, years now, Republicans have been pounding the table on getting a border deal. They call it, they're trying to impeach Secretary Mayorkas over it, but you're suggesting that politics may get in the way. In other words, if the Republicans compromise with Democrats on this, it might be perceived by Democrats as a win, thus a win for Joe Biden, and because of that, they're not going to do anything.
Yeah, potentially. And keep in mind the Democrats in the White House have really conceded a lot here in the sense of these border negotiations to the point that it has angered some progressives within the party that, Democrats are giving up too much, whether that's on the issue of, expulsion authority, whether that's this issue of parole that really has emerged kind of as a sticking point within these negotiations. So it's, for the White House and the Democrats to put a lot on the table, and then ultimately, if Republicans end up walking away from this, the optics of that is not great, really, for either side, but certainly probably hurts Democrats more so. So, it really is a difficult situation. And also the bigger question, too, is if, a deal is not forged, what happens to that foreign aid funding? The White House has made clear that Ukraine is running out of money. They need to re-up funding for them to be able to, fight Russia effectively. And so, will there still be some type of supplemental package? Can they still get some type of aid bill through Congress that assists, again, not only Ukraine, but also Israel, where we have this growing conflict in the region, not just between Israel and Hamas, but, the broader region as a whole. So, there are a lot of concerns about where this could go next.
All right, Nikole, thank you.
You bet.